If you feel called to write about your life and are ready to set yourself up for success as a creative nonfiction author, today's video is for you. Welcome to my presentation on my program, the Spark Your Story Lab. If we haven't met yet, I'm Nicole Breit, an award-winning poet, essayist, and writing coach, and I'm the creator of the Spark Your Story Lab, a program for creative nonfiction writers who want to craft their best work and share it with the world. I can't wait to dive in and tell you all about my program and how it can help you craft submission-worthy creative nonfiction and share your stories with the world, even if you've never written a personal essay or it's been years since you've done any creative writing at all. Like Spark Your Story Lab writer Shelley Logan. Shelley hadn't written anything creative in 20 years when she joined the Spark Your Story Lab and celebrated her first publication acceptances in less than 2 months. That is a quarter of the time it took me to reach the same milestone. But before we talk further about how the Spark Your Story Lab can help you make big leaps forward toward your writing dreams, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about me and my own journey as a writer and instructor, so you have some context about how I learned what it is that I now teach. So 10 years ago, I was an unknown writer. I was a poet who dreamed of one day writing a deeply personal book about my life, but I had no idea how to get started or how I was ever going to get published. When I think back to my youngest days, I had always felt called to write about my life. I actually created this little scrapbooking page, not as a school project when I was in first grade, but something I wanted to do at home and asked my mom to help me with. That's how passionate I've always been about personal storytelling. You can see in that first picture, that's me when I'm about 9. The only badge I wanted from Brownies was the writing badge and the art badge, so I'm writing a story there. I went on, because I wanted to always be a teacher, to earn a Bachelor of Education following my Bachelor of Arts in English. But for me, it was really the big life transition of becoming a mom that motivated me to try and figure out how I was going to finally be a writer. And that was the time of life where I prioritized my writing. Life was busy at the time. I was the mom of 2 young kids. I worked full time. I was looking after aging parents. I had big dreams for my writing, but I didn't have a lot of time to figure things out. And that is why I'm really excited to share what I've learned about writing short form memoir, because I know it can help a lot of other writers who are in the same place. They don't have a lot of time to devote to their writing, so they need to be highly effective with the time that they do have. In 2014, I took my first creative nonfiction course, and it was on the lyric essay. And this is a hybrid form that marries poetry and prose. And it unlocked the stories I had always wanted to write. It was just the perfect genre for me. When I experimented with structure, I found that the creative process became easier and more fun, even when writing into my more difficult material. I'm not sure if you can relate to this, but a lot of the writers who come my way into my programs want to write about difficult life experiences, trauma, personal loss, and struggle to figure out how to do that. Other writers that I've taught also found writing with different experimental forms has helped them to do that work, like Shelley Logan. She says experimenting with different short forms has been incredibly helpful for accessing memories and actually getting some of these stories from my mind to the page. It is crazy how I've been able to write things that became too overwhelming and daunting to even try. This creative experimentation that I was doing in this first course on the lyric essay was essential to the development of my work, and it launched my career. The very first lyric essay I wrote became my first publication in a literary journal. All of my award-winning essays play with form in some way. Here's what my very first lyric essay looked like. I wrote it in the form of a list. Just wanted to show you what one example of a lyric essay can look like. I like to call the magic of working with form story chemistry. Something magical happens when you take the story ideas, the material you have, and you mash it with a form that you have never tried before. And now you have a hint about why I called my signature program the Spark Your Story Lab. It really is inspired by experimentation. In 2016, I won 3 literary awards for my lyric essays, and that was absolutely life-changing for me. So here's what happened next after that amazing year of celebrating success. I had trained as a teacher, but I had taught elementary school. Those awards gave me the confidence to teach adults, to teach writers who also shared that passion for personal storytelling. Now my job is to help writers enjoy the recognition their work deserves in a fraction of the time it took me to figure it out. I launched my first creative nonfiction course called CNF Outliers in January of 2017. And since then, I've guided many authors towards their first publications and awards in my writing programs, including a couple of the writers that I've featured here who posted in our private Facebook group, letting me know when and where some of the work that they've drafted in my courses ended up being accepted for publication or even nominated for and won awards. So there's something to this about merging personal storytelling and form and structure. So here's what I've learned. Career breakthroughs begin with creative breakthroughs. That was true for me and for many of the writers that I've taught. And the thing that holds most writers back isn't a lack of being gifted or talented. It's just not knowing the way forward. It's just a gap in knowledge. And once you learn that, you can achieve your goals. That is why I created my signature program, the Spark Your Story Lab. I was consistently, over and over again, amazed and humbled by what writers who were new to creative nonfiction were able to achieve in just a 6-week course once they learned what they didn't know, the possibilities of form and structure for personal storytelling. Perhaps even more importantly, I knew that I could help writers because in teaching the first 6-week courses that I taught, I had the opportunity to learn where writers had gaps in their knowledge, even seasoned authors with MFAs who were coming into my courses to learn things that they weren't learning in other workshops. That insight allowed me to build a new program that was different than other programs out there and could help writers in ways my other courses couldn't, because I now had the benefit of greater insight into how to help writers. I could see the patterns, I could see what was working, and I could see where they tended to fall. So my goal was to create a transformative 12-month program that could help writers trim years off their learning curve by teaching them how to quickly craft innovative new and help them maintain momentum by teaching them how to work with rather than against their creative process. When a writer understands the relationship of process, form, and craft, they have all the keys to a creative and fulfilling writing practice. However, process and form are rarely taught, and I've never seen them integrated with lessons on craft anywhere else. I knew I was creating something special and unique in the world of online writing courses that didn't resemble anything out there in its aim, scope, or design, based on insights I had personally gathered by writing and teaching experimental CNF for years. Over the years, I had reviewed hundreds of stories and based much of my new curriculum on comments that I was repeating over and over again when offering feedback. So one of the very first tools that I created was a revision checklist to help writers read their drafts back with an objective eye and identify next steps without having to rely on another reader until they felt ready to share, because writing creative nonfiction is really vulnerable work. And it isn't ideal, I feel, to share early work until you feel confident and ready. So that course initially was called Spark Your Story. That was the beta name for the course. And it has now gone through several iterations to make it better, increasingly more inclusive and effective as a unique self-guided program, now called the Spark Your Story Lab. In 2021, the last time that I updated the program, I was reading books about anti-racism and decolonizing classrooms. at the same time that I was really thinking about what scientists and artists have in common, this pull to find creative solutions to questions by the process of experimentation. Inspired by that open, playful, and curious approach to creative experimentation had served me and my previous students well. It was actually key to my success as an award-winning writer. I revamped the program as a lab. And that affected every element of design. The Spark Your Story Lab was designed now as a friendly and encouraging learning space to get creative and write brilliant and innovative new stories. You can see that spirit of experimentation reflected in every element of the program design. This is the lab manual that looks like a high school biology manual, maybe. And I even crafted a periodic table of elements as a bonus download that you can print and tape over your desk. Although the Spark Your Story Lab is an end-to-end program in that it takes you from very first spark of an idea through revision and publication, it's also very intentionally designed not to overwhelm you. This isn't everything in the kitchen sink. It's the essentials. I give you exactly what you need, no more and no less, to master the essentials of powerful storytelling so you can focus on the writing part. You can focus on crafting fresh and innovative new work you're excited to share with the world. I even include a list of 50 markets that I've compiled over the years when writers who go through my courses get published so that you know exactly where to submit your work, and that is going to save you hours of research time. One of the things that I love best about the forms that I teach in the lab is that what I call outlier CNF on the fringes, centers the experience of marginalized folks by breaking traditional linear storytelling structure that has been used over the ages to encode patriarchy and legitimize colonial narratives. So LGBTQ2S+ writers like me, as well as my BIPOC, mixed race, differently abled, neurodiverse students, and those dealing with mental illness or recovering from trauma, tell me how liberating it feels to bend and break form to tell new kinds of stories, that this radical act mirrors their experience of fractured memories and their attempt to piece together fragments to make something whole. So the forms really reflect experience, the personal experience of many writers. Now, ensuring representation of marginalized voices had always been a concern as I developed curricula for my courses. With the Spark Your Story Lab, I had been reading about how to create an anti-racist learning environment, and I came to see that I had intuitively built writing programs from the beginning that bucked the troubling conventions of traditional writing workshops, even though at the time I admittedly and regrettably lacked awareness in 2017 of how BIPOC or multiracial writers might experience these online and in-person learning environments. I was coming from my own place when I decided that the workshopping model wasn't for me and the courses that I taught. My focus was on designing an alternative to the workshopping model that would support and encourage creative work for every writer who wanted to learn from me in an online format. I was working from a place of discomfort with workshopping as a highly sensitive queer woman who needs to feel a great deal of safety and trust to share works in progress, especially when they deal with raw or vulnerable material. And I just thought other writers would appreciate that too, that there was a different way to run a class. Each reading that I include in the Spark Your Story Lab was drafted by a writer in one of my earlier courses. So they reflect the demographics of writers who had been enrolling in my programs from 2017 on. And I chose them to best exemplify the form and structures that I teach. So although the readings don't represent every voice or story, there are only 10 readings, I have taken care to ensure diverse voices present in the rest of the program, in the lessons when I need to illustrate a concept with a reference or quote. Creative nonfiction is an art form that I love for so many reasons, and I am so excited to share what I know about this art form, including the fact that writing experimental short form memoir can really help kickstart writing careers faster than many authors expect or even believe is possible. If you are a poet, if you write fiction, creative nonfiction is a catch-all genre that you can start bringing all of those skills that you have, all of your knowledge of art and literary devices to tell stories that have a higher chance of being accepted for publication, because fewer writers submit to creative nonfiction contests. Fewer writers submit their work to regular submissions for journals that publish CNF. So if you want to write a book, I really encourage you to start getting those publication credits by learning to write creative nonfiction and submitting your work for publication. Now I would like you to meet multi-award-winning author Rowan McCandless. Rowan won her first of several literary awards within 6 months of taking my first CNF course. She is now the editor of a literary magazine. She's a respected instructor. She teaches in some of my programs. She is the author of a celebrated memoir that began in my first CNF class, and she was nominated for Canada's top literary prize, the Governor General's Award, in 2022. Rowan's book deals with difficult material like intergenerational trauma, race, and domestic abuse. Her debut memoir, Stephanie's Children, A Life in Fragments, includes several award-winning pieces drafted in my Spark Your Story programs. And I could not be more excited and happy for Rowan. She says, I had a drawer full of essays that I didn't know what to do with. Nicole helped me learn to shape the stories that were sitting idle, just waiting for their creative spark. I've become a better writer and finally feel I can express my true self. I'd also like you to meet Spark Your Story Lab writer Margaret Nowasic. In 2018, Margaret told me that she stopped writing after a slew of rejections. Then in 2019, she signed up for my Spark Your Story Lab, the very first beta version of the course, and wrote about her fraught relationship with her mother as a hermit crab essay in the form of a mother-daughter phrase book. This was a story she'd also struggled to tell for years, but finally found her form when she was in the lab. She explained that a phrase book is a very common stylistic trope in Polish language instruction booklets where people can study everyday language everyday dialogue as they study a foreign language. And her piece ended up being published once it won the award, and you can see how beautifully it's laid out here. And it's broken down in sections with words that she provides definitions for, like love and fear and care and family, by using that as a theme to embed stories from her life and her relationship with her mother. Judge Ian Brown said, Mother-Daughter Phrasebook Definitions is a very original, very subtle piece that has a very original form. It doesn't follow any form I've ever seen before. So I just want to highlight the quote because it just shows what contest judges are looking for. Things that impressed him was that her piece didn't follow a form he had ever seen before. It surprised him. So what's happening structurally in Margaret's piece, in Rowan's work, in other writers, has something that many essays lack, and that is shape. These essays demonstrate an interplay of form and content that creates resonance and amplifies meaning while stretching the idea of what an essay can be. That's what I can teach you in the lab. A lot of writers worry about their subject matter and they think, why would a contest judge or editor or reader care about this thing that happened to me? They might say, you know, nothing really dramatic has happened. I'm not writing about contemporary issues. Is anyone going to care? And those fears hold them back from learning about how to write their stories and share them. I am here to say that creative nonfiction is the fastest growing literary genre currently, which means there is actually a hungry market of readers for true stories that are well told. This is to encourage you. Your sweet spot is what people want to read, true stories well told, and what you want to write, that sweet spot in the middle is where you need to be telling your stories. There are readers out there. You might think every topic has been written about. Why my story? Just show them a different way to look at the theme that they've seen written about many, many times. Just like there are only so many themes, there are only so many ways to construct a sentence. And there are only so many literary devices out there, and just a handful of craft techniques that instantly improve your work. So my advice to you is to learn the many possibilities of form and start experimenting. Master the fundamentals of craft and start submitting. Submit your work. If I can do this, you can too, for sure. I've seen so many writers come through my programs who have no experience with creative nonfiction. Maybe they haven't even written anything creative in years, or they do writing as part of their careers, but they're very technical writers, or very, they're business writers. They don't write creatively. And with a little bit of guidance, you will be surprised too about what you are able to come up with. So now that we've covered the backstory to this program and how I came to teach it, I want you to imagine how it will feel to finally realize those writing dreams that you have been carrying with you, maybe for years or decades. And if you're ready to make some story chemistry, I would love to tell you more about what's included in the Spark Your Story Lab. In the lab, you get everything you need to produce a portfolio of compelling, shapely, well-crafted stories you can submit to publications, with guidance on my entire step-by-step process, from story idea and structure to polishing and submitting, an end-to-end program. You're going to learn an empowering process that integrates the 3 elements of story making I mentioned earlier in this presentation: process, form, and craft. As you experiment with 10 forms, with those brilliant sample readings that were produced in my other courses. This self-guided program is perfect for you if you need flexibility to learn around a busy schedule and you want a program you can work through at your own pace, at your own convenience, and you are a self-motivated learner who is comfortable developing new skills with the guidance of lessons, videos, exercises, checklists, and guides. There are no live lectures in this program. And although I can't provide one-to-one coaching or feedback on your work in the lab, I have designed it to feel like I'm right there beside you every step of the way, so you can write your best work and make some amazing discoveries in the process. Like Jane Bach, Spark Your Story Lab writer. These are her words that she shared with me recently about a project that she started and finished in the lab. It was really hard and fun and rewarding to put on paper things that I never would have before in that way. One of the pieces I had really written already, but it took a completely different form. And once I put it into that new form, then watching what that did to the writing was really exciting. It's easy to think, okay, the writing's not going to be as good because I have to change the form, but it works the other way. The form made the writing better. And that was so incredible to see happen. I'm just so proud that I put that together, and very grateful to you to have led me there. So thank you. So access to the Spark Your Story Lab includes 12 months where you will experience my story method mini course that's going to walk you through process, what you need to know about process, 6 workshops, which I call story labs, the 40-page lab manual, 12 sample readings, where we do monthly write-ins and a Q&A. I also call them office hours, and they are not mandatory for you to attend. They are there for enrichment. But what we do is get together once a month, scheduled a time for us to do 2 30-minute writing sprints together. I bring prompts, but you're allowed to bring whatever you want to work on. And at the end, I take questions about anything related to process, form, and craft, or the program itself. The program includes 40+ short videos, a resource library with 5 bonus guides, and a 10 story structures cheat sheet for you. The one live component is that monthly write-in and Q&A I mentioned. Currently, they're scheduled for the first Thursday of each month, and they are so much fun. I love hosting them and connecting with other writers in the lab. I also have a bonus guide to polishing and publishing that's going to save you countless hours of research and includes that list of 50 creative nonfiction journals where my students have published work produced in my program. So you do not have to spend your weekend researching where to submit the work that you create in the lab to. You are going to cut years off your learning curve when you know essential craft elements for drafting powerful stories, what you need to know about story arc when you're writing CNF, 10 story structures for crafting brilliant creative nonfiction, how to move past doubt, fear, and resistance. This stuff on process is not typically taught even in MFA programs, and my entire step-by-step process for crafting award-worthy essays. I'd like you to meet Spark Your Story writer Christina Robbie, who's on Severance and Connection, a lyric essay, won Subterrane's 2019 Lush Triumphant Literary Contest, and her piece on playing Double Jeopardy won the Malahat Review's 2020 Constance Rook CNF Prize. Both of those were started in my courses. Her piece, Moon in Fragments, recently won the Writer Union of Canada's short prose competition. And here's what Christina says. Moon in Fragments was not written in one of Nicole's classes, but I wrote it based on everything I learned with her. It is a collage essay that I would never have drafted in that form if it weren't for working with Nicole earlier. This is the most exciting development for me because all of the processes I learned in Spark Your Story are so ingrained in me now that it's changed the way I approach writing forever. So let's look inside the Spark Your Story lab at all of the bits and pieces that comprise the program. The first module is called the Spark Your Story method, and here you're going to learn how to work with your creative process, right past blocks like fear and resistance, and avoid what I call large-scale overwhelm with my story meet form strategy. Module 1 is a lab, the first lab. Its theme is origin stories, and you're going to learn how to assess each of your story ideas to uncover your most potent material. You're going to use a technique called perhapsing to speculate gaps in ancestral memory, and you're going to explore early memories in the form of a diptych essay or two-part essay form. And the next module is a lab with the theme called the emergent self. Here we're going to learn how to craft powerful essays using 3 essential techniques. You're going to write a potent micro-length essay by practicing the art of compression, which is important for all of your writing, not just creative nonfiction. And you're going to explore vulnerable material in the form of a hermit crab essay. Module 3's theme is the body. You're going to learn how to revise effortlessly using my attentive noticing technique. You're going to practice writing sensual imagery by writing from the body's point of view, and you're going to balance the art of show and telling in a photo essay. The theme of Module 4 is where the heart is, and in this one you're going to learn how to make readers feel what you're feeling using mood and atmosphere. You're going to practice self-care tools, which are so important when writing creative nonfiction, always when working with difficult material. And we're going to learn how to effectively structure your story in 3 parts, otherwise known as a triptych essay. The theme of Module 5 is the bigger world. You're going to learn how to use identity markers to situate your story in a greater cultural, social, or geographical context. I share guidelines for effective revision, and you're going to link your thoughts, memory, and images in a collage essay. Module 6, the final lab theme is nature and the spirit. Here you're going to write about the experience of mystery, wonder, and awe. You're going to learn how to make the intangible tangible with concrete detail in your writing. You're going to practice polishing your work and preparing for publication, and you're going to build and arrange a powerful lyric essay. Meet Spark Your Story writer Kay Solomon, who says, just opened my email to see my very first acceptance for Hands on the Piano written in the Spark Your Story Lab. I can't wait to finally be a published writer. There are a number of resources included in the Spark Your Story Lab as well, and I'd like to quickly run through them. As I mentioned earlier, we have 10 sample readings that exemplify the 10 forms you'll be practicing. So you're going to learn how to construct your own experimental essays by example with essays that were written in my previously launched creative nonfiction program. You're going to also identify and reinforce the key elements of each of those structures. The lab manual is where you're going to find and complete exercises, activities, and writing projects with helpful checklists that reinforce your learning in the labs themselves. The third resources I share is my story structures cheat sheet. This is a printable 2-pager that outlines the 10 story structures included in the lab to help you shape your raw material into powerful short form memoir. I also include bonuses because bonuses are always fun. And I really had fun with this table of craft elements. It's a printable 2-page reference that provides an at-a-glance summary of 35 literary devices. I've highlighted the most important ones that I teach in the lab. And the second page has a brief definition of each. Then that's going to help you continue to craft your best work. I know that some writers really benefit from working with a partner or a group. So I created a 14-page guide called an accountability guide that will help you nurture progress with a 4-week schedule, suggested schedule for working through each lab with a partner if you go through the program with a friend, as well as tips for providing helpful feedback on each other's work, or anytime you work with a writing group, if you are going to be sharing feedback, this guide will help you do that. Bonus 3 is my Polish and Publish guide. This is the guide that includes that list of curated markets to help you take the final steps, polishing your work and submitting it for publication using that revision checklist to help you. I also include a list of more than 40 resources that is going to help you continue to develop your craft. These are articles, videos, books on craft, structure, and grief writing to support your growth long-term as a creative nonfiction writer. And the 5th bonus is a process guide. This is a 1-page printable you might want to keep over your desk that's going to keep you on track with my 10-point step-by-step guide to developing your memoir in progress or any work of creative nonfiction. Final words from one of my students, Emily James. Nicole's writing programs have launched so many careers at this point. I'm calling it a movement, one of the kindest things I think anyone has said about my work. So if all of this sounds like a fit for where you are right now with your writing, I encourage you to join the waitlist so that I can email you as soon as enrollment opens again for the lab. It opens on an ongoing basis. And I've got the link right here for you, www.nicolebreit.com/Spark Your Story Lab waitlist. Don't forget those dashes in between. They're important that you go to the right page. Thank you so much for tuning in and learning about the lab. I hope that you found this resource helpful. This video gave you the information you need, and I would love to see you in the lab. If you have any questions at all, you can always email me. My email address is info@sparkyourstory.com. Thank you so much again for tuning in, and I will see you in another video.